This was a land riddled by political unrest and violence. Pillage, crucifixions, Jews against Romans.
You see, brother, how many thousands of Jews have believed, and all of them are zealous for the law.
There was a revolution going on.
And all the believers used to meet together in Solomon's colonnade. No one else dared join them, even though they were highly regarded by the people. At that, the captain went with his officers and brought the apostles. They did not use force, because they feared that the people would stone them.
When Jesus died, his new movement needed a successor to take over. The non-biblical historical sources are almost unanimous as to the identity of this new leader.
The disciples said to Jesus, "We know that you're going to leave us. Who will be our leader?" Jesus replied to them, "No matter where you are, you're to go to James the Just, for whose sake heaven and earth came into being."
They chose James the Just as overseer of Jerusalem.
James the Just is recorded to have been the first elected to the throne of the oversight of the church in Jerusalem.
The succession of the church passed to James, the brother of the Lord.
But when it comes to the Bible, you have to look very hard to uncover the truth about James's role as the first leader of Jesus' new movement.
The writing of James out of Christian history takes centuries, but it starts early. Where we first see it very clearly is in the Gospel of Luke in the book of Acts. Mark had mentioned the brothers of Jesus and even named them. Luke comes along, he's got Mark as a source, and he comes to the passage where Mark mentions the brothers and he just deep sixes it. It's gone, it's not there. Now he gets to the story of the early movement after the death of Jesus, book of Acts. It's got 28 chapters. By chapter 9, it's all Paul. Now, in those first chapters, James is mentioned a couple of times, and it's even acknowledged that he's the leader. But it's almost a grudging admission. Oh yes, there was this guy James, he was in charge, but Paul came along and that's who we're really interested in. That's the beginning of the story of the writing out of James, I think, from history. It's the New Testament itself, writes him out. Judaism became very unpopular after the great Roman War. There was a tax put on Jews, and for someone to say, "I'm Jewish," did not necessarily draw a favorable response. Oh, you're one of those hidden enemies of the emperor and of the empire. And the church disassociated itself from the Jews. If you'd ask James, "What are you?" he would say, "I'm a Jew. I follow the God of Abraham, and I follow the leadership of my teacher, my brother Jesus." If you go forward a couple hundred years and say, "What are you?" "I'm a Christian who believes in the heavenly Jesus Christ, Virgin Mary, Mother of God, and there's no family. The family's lost, forgotten, blotted out, totally irrelevant to this, I would call it, new religion."
One of its professors, Father Dean Burchard, agreed to meet me. Why is James so marginalized in church history? I mean, we've seen no pictures or statues of him in Rome.
Yeah, that's true. And unfortunately, most of the history of that Jerusalem church is lost. If it were not for Luke, or with recording the few little things that he learned, we'd know next to nothing at all. You know, and so most of that history is lost, and it's tragic.
So you don't believe Luke was trying to write James out of the story and promote Paul over James?
Well, it's true, and that's an issue in the study of the Acts of the Apostles, you know, that it's a selective history, you know, it's just a few pieces of that puzzle Luke chose to include. And as a historian, I try to be as objective as possible and try to do a critical understanding and reading, interpretation of the evidence that's there. But I don't begin with a basic suspicion against the tradition.
I believe that Jesus had a mother, father, 4 brothers, at least 2 sisters, aunts, uncles, nephews and nieces. One of his relatives, John the Baptist, was his spiritual teacher and helped start his mission. After Jesus' death, his eldest brother James took over control of the church and ran it for another 30 years. Ever since, the Roman Catholic and Orthodox churches have not only hidden the true story, they've also suppressed their version of Christianity, the original message handed down by Jesus himself, because it was too dangerous. But amazingly, if you know where to look, you can still find it in the Bible itself.
You know, even though James and the family have been written out of history and marginalized within the New Testament, it's not wholly lost. And you know, the nice thing about it, it's on the pulpit of every church in the world. It's right there in the New Testament. You open it up, you gotta dig, you gotta find it. But the shades and shadows of the brothers, of the family, of its importance and what it means is still there.